Have you come with anything at all that you're feeling you would like from us? No?
Know a bit more about action research.
Yeah? Yeah, no, that would be good. Yeah?
What your views on.
Any others?
That was the same for me.
The same thing. Yeah?
I was trying to juggle what my expectations were until they weren't met.
As soon as they're not being met, please let me know.
I don't know what they are yet.
But, I mean, where I'm coming from is literally, it's 40 years ago that I did the first action reflection study that I'd worked on. And it introduced me to an action research cycle, because up to that time, in 1976, I was at the University of Bath, and I was working with 6 teachers to improve learning in mixed ability groups. I produced my first evaluation report, which drew on methods and theories and models of curriculum development, changing teacher learning processes, and theories of evaluation. Okay, so I presented that to my academic colleagues, and they said, yeah, Jack, that's a really good evaluation report. Presented it to the teachers I'd worked with. They said, look, Jack, we can follow it, but where are we? We're not in here. So as soon as he made the criticism, I could see that actually it was justified. All right, so you'll see, it's all in terms of models, yeah? So I went back with 2 of the teachers, and I produced this. And this is full of cartoons, it's full of visual stuff, it directs you to video clips. And the teachers looked at this, and they said, yes, Jack, we can clearly see ourselves in this. I drew on data from them, with the kids. I went back and saw how they'd actually stated their concerns related to their values. They'd imagined what to do and created an action plan. They'd acted, gathered data with me to make a judgment, and they'd actually reviewed and evaluated their practice and then produced an explanation. Right? Now, that introduced me to action reflection cycles. It was the teachers saying to me, my academic models really didn't explain their practice. So that was 40 years ago. And over those 40 years, what I've done, where John asked about what makes it action research, it felt to me that I had to ask the question and answer it and say, how do I improve my practice? So the key question for me, and always has been from an action research perspective, is how do I improve my practice? How do I understand that process of improvement? And following the early work of CARN, how do I improve the social context in which the practice is located? Those were the 3 defining elements. So when John was asking what might make or strengthen my action research, it would be to focus on not the egotistical I, because in this context, I'm influenced by you. So there is an I-we context and relationship, which makes the I not the egotistical or the autonomous I, but actually a relational I, which is connected with you. So when I look at the sense of that 40 years of action research, my paper is on the web, and you can access it from my website, actionresearch.net. And it's just in the Jack Whitehead section, and this comes up, and it documents some of those key learning experiences in action research over the past 40 years. The most important one for me was being given videos by the inspectorate when I was head of a science department, videotaping my practice, and I thought I'd got inquiry learning day. It was a dreadful shock to look at that class and to see that I was giving the children every question. I thought I'd got it where they were giving me the questions and I was responding. Now, it wasn't that I was a hypocrite, it was that I genuinely believed I got inquiry learning going. It was the videos that made me see myself as a living contradiction. And I brought I as a living contradiction into explanations of educational influence. I think that was one of the contributions I made to action research, because up to that time, I don't know if you realise the 2,500-year battle between the formal logicians and the dialecticians, but if you include I as a contradiction in your theory, people like Popper would say, this is nonsense, you can't do this, it's based on a loose and woolly way of speaking, which is entirely useless. So you have this battle going on between these 2 forms of logicians, where for me, I could clearly see myself as a living contradiction. I insisted on bringing that within my accounts. So when I came out of the University of London with my academic diploma and master's in psychology, I was already a full-time science teacher. And the 2 professors, Peters and Hurst, they said to me, and this outraged me, that their task in educational theory was to introduce me to the philosophy, psychology, sociology, and history of education. This was educational theory. And they said explicitly that they were going to replace the practical principles I used to make sense of my practice with the principles of the disciplines of education. It was as bold as that. They stated it. Our task is to replace your practice. Now that really outraged me. It changed my sense of vocation. I was a head of science, but I then was lucky to go to the University of Bath to try to see if I could transform educational theory through an action research process that brought the knowledge of the practitioners as legitimate knowledge into the academy. Okay, so that's what I spent most of my 40 years doing. And between 96 to 2012, it was great, because at 16, not only academics, but to get 2 doctoral submissions successfully completed over those 16 years. There were 32 of them, and I put them all on the web. And so it seemed to me to develop beyond reasonable doubt that you could legitimate the knowledge of the practitioners as they explain their own educational influence with their children, with their colleagues, and with the social formations as legitimate knowledge. Okay, so in relation to that sense of the action research, I think that that archive of the masters and also the doctorates, because I'm really pleased that all over the world now people have been sending me what we call their living theory doctorates. This is practitioners that have explained their educational influence and actually got their doctorates, put them on them, and asked me to put them in my living theory section. Okay, so that in terms of the action research processes, which were really crucial for me in terms of trying to transform the nature of the knowledge. And I built in procedures of validity. So when you were asking, issues, I don't shy away from issues of rigor. I like Richard Winter's point about rigor being most important. In 1989, learning from experience. I love Habermas's criteria for social validity, where I'm now here with you. I brought a paper, it's on the web, you can access it. And I can say to you, look, I want to strengthen its rigor and objectivity by asking you, can you make it more comprehensible? Can you show me where the evidence base can be strengthened when I make claims to know something? And in particular, can you help me to develop my socio-cultural and historical understandings of the influences that are in my practice?
So
And then,
Mr. Peters actually got you.
oh,
You've done all those things they wanted you to do, I guess.
well, when you say they wanted me to do, what they wanted me to do, and I got it in 1970, was to regurgitate for them in the academic diploma which I got in the philosophy and psychology, that their discipline's approach to educational theory. So I mastered the insights in the philosophy and psychology, regurgitated them, and I got through, yeah? Now, it was only later that I began to challenge and say, look, this is wrong. It was when I was doing the masters in psychology. No, what they did was actually ignore and replace my practical principles. And that's why I'm saying over here, to actually have the courage, the confidence to say, look, I'm going to actually explain my educational influence with my students, but I'm also going to bring in the most advanced social theories of the day. They're not going to explain what I do. I'm going to draw insights from them that help me to develop my own explanations. Okay, now, the thing that really impressed me recently, and it's going to come up in Cartagena with this World Congress that we're thinking of, and this first global assembly in action research, or knowledge democracy, is this. So it's by De Souza Santos, and it's one of his latest books on epistemologies of the South, and he's got this weird word which I'd never heard of: justice against epistemicide. It's like epistemology, yeah, but it's epistemicide, which is literally the murder of knowledges, which is what Hurst and Peters did to my knowledge. They said we're going to replace it. We're going to replace it. Yeah, they're going to try.
They disrupted.
Yes. So why I'm really excited about this is it seems to me this is one of the most advanced social theories of the day, which I'm now starting to integrate in my own insights as I develop an understanding of what he's talking about ecologies of knowledge. Ecologies of knowledges, which is everybody here has got their own embodied knowledge they could make available and make public. Yeah? Now he's saying, because I was asked to go to Bolivia 6 weeks ago and give a 4-day workshop at one of the largest universities, the University of St. Simon. And it's in a place called Cochabamba. Now, it was a great success, this workshop. There were 90 members of staff, and they all produced their written accounts over those 4 days, and then they were given a week to produce. And the reason it was a great success was not because of what I did. It was that I had an amazing translator. He was called Giovanni Fossati, And Giovanni was a member of the staff, so he understood the culture and where the staff were coming from. He took my ideas, but didn't just translate them. You know, I've got the videos of where he's actually engaging with his colleagues from within the inside of their culture, and then actually encouraging them to generate their own explanations of their own practice and their influence with their students. And they were so far advanced that I was expecting they got visual data on their smartphones, they'd really got documentary evidence, but they'd never explained their influence in relation to their students' learning. And Giovanni was able to communicate something, if you like, from the north, from the action research processes that I'd worked on, but into the culture without it being colonizing. Am I making sense here? Because it seems so important, this, in terms of trying to develop action research, which is not just within the northern hemispheres and the northern knowledges, but acknowledges that within South Africa there's a lovely notion of Ubuntu that Nelson Mandela embraced, and that Bruce here, as his doctorate, has really embraced Ubuntu. Now, for me as a white man, to try to get on the inside of Ubuntu, it's this intercultural translation. And it's like this in South America. The qualities of relationship within that community are very different to my own. And I've had to really make this genuine leap to try to understand, through what De Santos is talking about, these ecologies of knowledges, and also the intercultural translation. That was his big idea at the end of this text. So I'm just saying, from insights, you know, when you say about the action research, it's continuously evolving through your own living theory, and you're demonstrating how you're extending what Richard Peters used to say, your cognitive range and concern. So you're extending that, deepening it, and also it's helping you to transform what you're doing. But I'll pause there because, as I say, in actionresearch.net, if you go into the writings, you'll see that I've got the paper that goes through, if you like, those 40 years of learning. What is it? You know, eyes are living contradiction, the issue of validity, bringing in the multimedia, because even now I hope you can sense that there's an energy about who I am and what I'm doing. But if I just try and put it on a page of text, you can't do it. And this is why I'm saying, look, we've got to go beyond the limitations of the text in De Santos's work in relating to the visual literacies, and I think Maud Hatfield might deal with this tomorrow, to bring that energy and the embodied meanings, which I'm expressing in the here and now, which I think you can get on the inside, a little bit through the visual, like Marie is actually taping this for me, because I'll be able to look back at whether or not I'm doing what I claim with the help of that visual data. And I can then incorporate that within my explanation of influence. Oh, okay, I'll just pause there. So is there anything you want me to take out now in terms of just questionings? That point about the action research, I hope I've answered part of that. Yeah? No? Yeah?
Very basic question, but just in terms of the educational influences,
Yeah.
is that, am I understanding that that's like socio-cultural, historical aspects that we are?
Okay, and this is why it was so difficult with creativity, because I'm a member of it's 5 by 5 by 5 equals creativity. It's been going for 16 years, it's a trust. Alma Kraft was one of the patrons of it. And one of our difficulties is that we haven't been able to say what is our educational influence in relation to creativity. Yeah, so really evil people can be creative. So, but what is it about what we're doing in terms of the educational influence which actually needs us to be creative? Peter Medawar, Nobel Prize-winning scientist, said, look, the creative and critical alternate and interact in forms of inquiry. Now, when I say about educational, I'm distinguishing it from education, because education research is where you go with the philosophy, psychology, sociology, history of education. If you're engaged in educational research, I'm saying you've got to demonstrate learning which actually carries hope for the flourishing of humanity. That, for me, educational is that kind of connection with those values that you and I hold, and which we believe carry that hope for the flourishing of humanity. And we've got to justify in our explanations why we believe our values, such as compassion and love, justice, freedom. Why are we saying that those actually are educational in that way of relating to that flourishing of humanity? Does that, yeah? The cultural, the historical is very important, but you draw insights from the socio-cultural and historical theory. Like when I was in Cochabamba, I had to understand, there was a beautiful mural, and now all I could see, it was highly illuminated when I gave a Skype introduction. I couldn't see the audience, I could just see this huge mural, it was the size of that wall. And I'd learned later, because it just attracted my attention, that it was actually awarded a Cultural Heritage Award by the Bolivian government. And it was showing the struggle of the Bolivian people for freedom and emancipation over centuries. Now, that has helped me to try and get on the inside of that sense of intercultural translation. So the socio-cultural, socio-historical insights of De Santos have helped me enormously. But they don't explain my educational influence. Do I make sense here? In terms of those 90 staff, that actually it was that negotiation with he was brilliant, Giovanni. And I loved working with him. I hadn't met him till I went there. But that relationship, I'll do something with him, hopefully, for the Colombian one in Cartagena to show into, cultural translation in action. Any other issues that you've, yes?
Yeah, I think your educational influence is moving, isn't it? It's not static. And yet we still seem to have an arrogance in white, westernised education research that the written form is the best way of demonstrating.
I spent ages showing that the visual data, which you can use as evidence, transforms the meaning, and this is an epistemological point, it changes the meaning of the standards that you use to judge the validity of the knowledge. So one of my PhD students, she was wonderful, hers was compassion. So it was a passion for compassion. And her videos were of Alzheimer's patients. It was all done ethically. But it persuaded the examiners that it was the embodied expression of a passion for compassion working with the patients that actually made the degree awardable. So I think you're absolutely right. This is why I advocate trying to bring in the visual data from our practice. Yeah.
And also in a contemporary way, because teenagers, they use multimedia in a really contemporary way, and yet we still just stick to this very static.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if you realise this, but you can get them. I know, Lynn, you said 20 years, but you haven't really challenged, yeah. And I understood, because of the pressures. But I reckon, doing these 32 doctorates, that all I needed were 2 examiners who weren't hostile. Yeah, that was all I needed. It didn't matter in the university, nothing mattered apart from getting 2 examiners who were competent, recognised, actually accredited by the university to examine. And that's why all of those doctorates got through. It was the university, certainly these committees would have just eliminated. But 2 examiners that you knew, when I first started, it was very difficult. It was John Elliott and perhaps 1 or 2 others, and that was it. But by the time I'd finished in 2012, and Marie was one of the last ones that I supervised at that, we had many, we had scores of examiners that we could choose from around the world, and that would actually recognise that you need to go beyond text. In fact, text just understood as printed text.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else before? You okay?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, you're talking very quick. I'm native speaker, so I have to translate it.
Okay. Yeah.
But, so I hope that I followed the story and the big line. I think I followed. Do you think that educational theory, you said, we can refer on our theoretical principles of education field? But I'm thinking, do we know what the 21st century means when it's about a framework for education? Because I think we have a framework of the 60s. So is this a framework that we have common sense in what the new generation needs to do?
Okay, so supposing you don't think about framework.
Yeah, I don't know
No, okay,
the name of references or principles.
Yeah, well, it's something which is dynamic. If you think of a framing rather than a frame, which is static, the values that we hold are clarified, and the guy Paul Faravan said this in his work Against Method, that we clarify our values in the course of their emergence in practice.
Yeah.
So continuously, my understanding of my values is evolving. So what I'm now doing with my doctor, I've got 4 doctoral students from the University of Cumbria, and the values that Marie brought into her doctorate in 2012, these are being modified through insights from this work on, for example, economic development, on what do we mean by, there's one of the doctors doing a living theory of caring.
Yes.
The Japanese group here introduced me yesterday to a different understanding of caring, which was an embodied one, it was a communal one. So I'll be able to take that back to Sonia Hutchison to say, look Sonia, I think this is important in relation to your understanding of the value of caring. So like I'm saying, this is a dynamic process, but I can hold myself accountable to you. I can see 2016, November, these are the values I'm trying to live by. You can see the history, and I started off as a positivist scientist, before I actually got on the inside of dialectics, and then I transformed again in 2002 in relation to inclusion, an inclusional logic and a way of being, like influenced by Ubuntu. So I think these are continuously evolving, but you can see, is this guy authentic in the sense that 2016, you can see what I was doing in Bolivia, are we going over to Colombia, this is what I'm trying to do, and you'll be able to evaluate whether I'm having the kind of influences that I claim. But I think that continuous transformation is very, very important. Sorry I'm speaking too quickly.
It's okay. No, it's okay, but I'm still thinking, because yesterday Ms. Norton talked about professional identity,
Yeah.
but then also on the political systems.
Yeah.
And later on in the home group, I said, I only can stand on my own feet.
Yeah.
If I come in my institute, I have political conflicts, and when I look in the global society, I'm in conflict with everything that's happening there. So, and I feel a little bit responsibility in the educational field,
Yeah.
because we have a responsibility in that value issue, and it's not only personal, it's also about community and
Yeah.
community building.
And that, I think, is what we're doing here.
Yes,
So the
right.
personal, the political, and the professional. If you follow those accounts I give on my paper, I show how I was sacked from the university. Luckily, a professor of public law took up my case, and they had to give me tenure until 2009. It was claimed that I disturbed, disturbed the morale of the whole School of Education. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it went up to the university. The one in '87 was my activities and writings were a challenge to the present and proper organisation of the university. Now, those tensions, I was just so fortunate to be able to resist them, and I had sufficient support outside politically, that really important people in the university didn't get their way, and they were not used to it. Now I was then left alone, so for all that time at the University of Bath, I've been able to pursue this research and to legitimate it, but it wasn't without those tensions politically. And now the extension into what Lonnie and Joe are doing in Cartagena, where we can bring our knowledge, and I do hope you'll look at the possibilities that Maria and myself are offering. We're doing a CARN study day in Bath on the 4th of February, where we're doing it virtually. So we're trying to bring as many people as possible in, and I'm going to try to do it as a trial at the university in Colombia, so that by June, we've got this technology which is bringing us together from different parts of the world. And this politically, it feels to me, is really important. So that we have got groups that are trying to live the values that we share and extend them. Any other issues or points?
There's something for me that links back to Jan's one about the younger generation. I say that as in my mid-50s, and this assumption that they're very savvy. I'm probably imagine they're very savvy with all this material, very used to reading images, and they also know how well they can be manipulated. So there's also something for me about the interpretation and whose interpretation. So I was thinking, when you were thinking, asking questions about assessment, and I'm thinking back to back and being influenced there, and really it has to be my account of what it is means to me, not somebody else's external imposition of what this thing I've created or my process. So I have to go to, I think this is what you're saying, Jack, I have to go to account for my own learning, my own process, and not have, that's why I'm worried about marking the product.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, why on earth would you mark the product? It's all about the process and how has this helped you to have insights about yourself? How has it helped you to have insights about other people? How has it helped you to think about action that you might take? And how has it helped you to
Yeah.
enact your new practice? Those to me are the authenticity
Yeah,
criteria.
yeah, but I
If
think,
you were Lincoln authenticity
Yeah,
criteria,
they are.
that's what they are.
but I think you've got to be careful
Yeah.
because of prudence. Now, I think you've all got to be, and I was prudent, right? In that if you say you're in a university, I am not going to grade this work, right? So if you say that, you can get sacked.
Yeah.
All right? Now, yeah. So I think there is a prudence quality here where Coach Kabama, right, they asked me to give marks to their work. They'd written, well, this was the administrator. And I said, look, this is nonsense. I explained why. And I did this with the Senate at the University of Bath. Tried to give 9 out of 10 or 80 out of 100 as a percentage, which you then think you can add as a percent. And it's nonsense because the data is on your own, you know, it's not interval or ratio data. But it didn't get anywhere. They insisted we give marks. So all I'm saying is, look, Barry MacDonald, I think it was about 1982, working at CARN, East Anglia, I came up with the notion of creative compliance. Creative compliance. Recognise the power that literally is trying to oppress or to stifle, mask or distort what you believe in. It's there, it's real. Now, you can operate what Barry called creative compliance, which is what I did at Coach Kabama, as I said to everybody, you've got your written work, what I want you to do is now share that with 2 other people, and you're going to grade it. And it's whether it's perfect, you've nothing to improve, whether it's very good, but you've got a bit to improve, whether you think there's a significant amount to improve, yeah, and then, no, you're not satisfied at all, and then this is a disaster, right? Now, they did it. So I was able, in my marking, to literally confirm the gradings that they'd given, apart from one who had actually just missed it completely, you know, and I had to say, no, I'm sorry, you can't have 80, I can only give this 30, you've got to redo it, right? Now, that was the only one that actually hadn't given an accurate assessment in the terms of those criteria. Sorry, yeah.
It's funny, isn't it, that because we want to be creative, students say they want to be creative, they say we want to be individualised. We were the first physio programme in the UK not to grade placements.
Yeah.
But 17 years later, that is still a battle. Because clinicians want to grade, and students are saying I want to grade. And yet, in other universities where they are graded, it doesn't work. And yet we want a homogenous.
What we did at Black is we had to say how we wanted to be judged.
Yes.
We had to say up front how we were going to work.
It was great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I wanted to pass. Right? So I'm not averse to that. I didn't want to be there and not get come away with, but it was fantastic to explore what my criteria would be.
And we focused on that.
Yeah.
You know, it was part of the educational process to become aware of the criteria you use to judge the quality, and then it was shared.
Yeah.
You kind of need a dollar of Marxism though, don't you, to
Yeah.
understand dominant hegemonies? You do?
Just a dollar. Just a dollar. Because, this guy, he's very good in terms of a critique of critical theory like Wilf and Stevens and the liberal, you know, economic policies. He's got a real different slant, so I agree with you in terms of, yeah, but I will look at that. Are we okay now? Because, many thanks indeed. Yeah, thank you for having us.